Imagine a tiny island the size of Maryland that holds the key to the global economy and could ignite World War III. That's Taiwan, producing over 90% of the world's most advanced semiconductors, the chips powering everything from smartphones to nuclear missiles. An attack here wouldn't just cripple global supply chains, it could drag the US and China into the deadliest conflict in modern history. Did you know billions of dollars in trade pass through the Taiwan Strait every day, and any move could turn it into the world's hottest geopolitical flashpoint where superpowers collide? But why has Taiwan become the world's ticking time bomb? The answer lies deep in history, a civil war that never truly ended. Greetings, viewers of BattleForge Legends, where we explore battles that shaped history, from ancient to modern times with deep analysis and gripping stories. Today, in this special video, we'll flip through the dark pages of the Chinese Civil War in the 1940s, the struggle between Chiang Kai-shek's Kuomintang and Mao Zedong's Communist Party. This wasn't just an internal war. It's the foundation for today's U.S.-China tensions. From Japan's collapse after World War II to bloody battles in Manchuria and finally Chiang's retreat to Taiwan, all turn this island into a symbol of an unhealed divide. At BattleForge Legends, we don't just tell stories. We analyze strategy, leadership, and lessons from the past to understand the present. Taiwan today is the center of America's strategy to contain China with massive military agreements and tech support. But the origin of it all lies in the Civil War from 1945-1949, with millions dead and a divided China. Through this video, you'll see how KMT corruption, CCP's genius guerrilla strategy, and U.S. intervention shaped the fate. This is a story of power betrayal and enduring legacy, a legacy that could explode at any moment. Join us to dive deeper. If you're passionate about war history and geopolitics, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for BattleForge Legends to never miss a new video. Now let's begin the journey. Imagine a horrifying scenario. A tiny island just 36,000 kilometers, smaller than America's Kentucky, suddenly becomes the trigger for World War III. Missiles streak across the narrow 130-kilometer strait. Global supply chains collapse. The world economy freezes, and millions of lives hang in the balance. This isn't science fiction. It's the potential reality in Taiwan right now. Producing over 90% of the planet's most advanced semiconductors, chips powering everything from iPhones to nuclear missile systems, Taiwan isn't just a silicon shield, it's the heart of America's strategy to contain China. Any invasion move from Beijing could draw direct U.S. intervention, turning the Taiwan Strait into a battlefield between two nuclear superpowers. And did you know, according to recent reports from the International Institute for Strategic Studies, IISS tensions here have skyrocketed, with over 1,700 Chinese aircraft incursions into Taiwan's airspace in 2024 alone. This is the world's most dangerous geopolitical hotspot, where one small mistake could spark global conflict. But why has Taiwan become such a ticking time bomb? The answer isn't in the present, but deep in history, specifically the Chinese Civil War that never truly ended in the 1940s. The war between Chiang Kai-shek's Kuomintang KMT and Mao Zedong's Chinese Communist Party CCP split China into two entities, the People's Republic of China on the mainland and the Republic of China ROC on Taiwan. To this day, Beijing views Taiwan as a renegade province, and reunification by force is part of Xi Jinping's Chinese dream. Meanwhile, Taiwan has evolved into a prosperous democracy with per capita GDP 3 times that of the mainland and a strategic U.S. ally via the 1979 Taiwan Relations Act, committing to provide defensive weapons. We will explore deeply Taiwan's role in global tensions originating from the Chinese Civil War. This isn't just history. It's the key to understanding why the world stands on the brink. We'll analyze from the World War II context, key players' failed negotiations to decisive battles, and legacy extending to 2025, when U.S.-Taiwan joint exercises are increasingly frequent and China has invested over $200 billion in military this year alone. At BattleForge Legends, we believe understanding history is the best way to predict the future. Think about it. The Chinese Civil War began right after Japan's surrender in 1945, leaving a devastated China with 20 million dead from Japanese invasion. That power vacuum turned into a life-or-death struggle between the U.S.-backed nationalist KMT and the CCP, a communist party with genius guerrilla strategy. The KMT controlled the government, but corruption and incompetence weakened them. The CCP from their Yan'an base attracted millions of peasants through land reform, turning them into a revolutionary force. The 4-year war with millions of casualties ended with Chiang Kai-shek's retreat to Taiwan in 1949, bringing 2 million people and the national gold reserves. From there, Taiwan transformed from Japanese colony 1895-1945 with an industrial foundation to an Asian tiger under KMT's initial harsh rule, and now a democratic symbol with Asia's highest freedom index, according to Freedom House. But the Civil War's legacy still haunts. The CCP sees Taiwan as an unresolved internal issue, and recent statements from the 2025 Communist Party Congress emphasize reunification is a historic mission. The U.S., through its Indo-Pacific strategy, views Taiwan as the first island chain shield against Beijing's expansion. TSMC's semiconductor role, supplying Apple, Nvidia, and even the U.S. military, makes Taiwan irreplaceable. An invasion could cause $10 trillion in global economic damage per Bloomberg economics estimates. And what does history teach us? Hotspots like Taiwan often explode from unresolved conflicts, like Sarajevo in 1914 or Danzig in 1939. Through this video, BattleForge Legends will guide you through every chapter, from the 1940s context, key players, to pivotal battles like Huaihai and Pingjin, and why the CCP won. We'll analyze strategy, leadership, and international intervention, especially the roles of the U.S. and Soviet Union. This is a story of power betrayal and resilience with lessons for today's world. If you're passionate about war history, geopolitics, and deep analysis, like subscribe and turn on notifications for BattleForge Legends. Right now, we have hundreds of similar videos from the Cold War to modern revolutions. Comment below. Do you think Taiwan tensions will lead to war? Now let's step into the historical journey. To truly understand the Chinese Civil War, we must go back to the 1940s, a decade of turmoil and suffering for the Chinese nation. Japan's invasion from 1937 to 1945, known as the Second Sino-Japanese War, turned China into a blood-soaked battlefield, leaving an immeasurable legacy of destruction. Starting with the Marco Polo Bridge incident in 1937, Imperial Japanese forces swiftly occupied major cities like Shanghai, Nanjing, and Wuhan. They employed the 3 alls strategy: kill all, burn all, loot all, leading to countless war crimes. Most notorious was the Nanjing Massacre of 1937-1938, where about 300,000 Chinese civilians and soldiers were slaughtered, and tens of thousands of women raped, on orders from Japanese commanders. In total, this occupation caused around 20 million casualties in China, mostly civilians according to historical estimates from Wikipedia and reputable sources like Britannica. The economy was devastated, factories, railways, and rural areas destroyed, leading to widespread famine and rampant disease. The nationalist government KMT under Chiang Kai-shek retreated to Chongqing while Mao Zedong's Communist Party, CCP, conducted guerrilla operations in the north. This war not only weakened China, but forced the KMT and CCP into a temporary alliance in the Second United Front, though rife with internal conflicts. Then, in August 1945, Japan surrendered unconditionally after the U.S. atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Emperor Hirohito's surrender announcement on August 15th and the formal signing on USS Missouri on September 2nd ended World War II in Asia. For China, this brought victory joy, but also a massive power vacuum. Japanese forces controlled about one-third of Chinese territory, including major cities and transport routes now withdrawing. According to Taiwan documents, the handover from Japan to China was supervised by the Allies, but in reality led to chaos. The KMT rushed to reclaim key areas using U.S. aircraft for troop transport, while the CCP moved secretly to control the countryside. The direct consequence was the re-explosion of internal tensions. Japanese weapon depots became contest targets, and China's economy continued to collapse with hyperinflation. According to the National Yun Museum, Japan withdrew from Manila in the Philippines similarly, but in China, the slow retreat allowed local factions to rise, complicating the situation. A crucial strategic factor was the Soviet invasion of Manchuria on August 9, 1945, just days before Japan's surrender. Operation August Storm, commanded by Marshal Vasilevsky, saw over 1.5 million Soviet troops attack Japan's Kwantung Army, Tokyo's elite force of about 700,000 soldiers. According to Wikipedia and Warfare History Network, the Soviets swiftly captured Manchuria in just 11 days, inflicting heavy casualties on Japan, about 84,000 dead, and capturing over 600,000 prisoners. The strategic significance was enormous. It not only hastened Japan's surrender, but reshaped East Asia's power balance. Manchuria. Manchukuo was Asia's most industrialized region at the time, with coal iron mines and weapons factories. Per the Yalta Agreement with the US and UK, the Soviets were allowed to occupy it to fight Japan, but they covertly supported the CCP by leaving thousands of tons of Japanese weapons and equipment for Mao's forces upon withdrawal in 1946. According to Imperial War Museums, this provided a huge advantage for the CCP in the upcoming Civil War, as Manchuria became a solid rear base. Moreover, this invasion weakened the KMT, who relied on the U.S. to transport troops to this remote area and enabled Soviet expansion in Korea and Inner Mongolia. In the emerging Cold War context, Stalin's actions weren't just defeating Japan, but positioning the USSR as a power in Asia, indirectly promoting China's division. Overall, the 1940s turned China into an exhausted nation, with the legacy of Japanese invasion and foreign intervention laying the foundation for the brutal Civil War. From World War II's ashes, the KMT and CCP would plunge into a life-or-death struggle, which we'll explore in the next section. Now we dive deep into the heart of the Civil War, the key players. This war wasn't just armed conflict, but a clash of ideologies, two visions for China's future. One side was the Kuomintang KMT, or Nationalist Party, led by Chiang Kai-shek. Born in 1887 in Zhejiang, Chiang was a military officer trained in Japan rising after the 1911 Huaihai Revolution. He inherited Sun Yat-sen's legacy, founder of the Republic of China, and became KMT leader in 1925. The KMT represented nationalist forces advocating a modern capitalist China with the slogan, "Nationalism, Democracy, People's Livelihood." They controlled the central government in Nanjing with a modern-equipped regular army. The U.S. strongly supported the KMT, providing billions in aid, weapons, and training, seeing them as allies against Japan and later communism. However, the KMT faced serious internal problems. Corruption was rampant in leadership. Generals often embezzled aid, sold weapons to enemies, and abused power for personal gain. Incompetent management was a major issue. Chiang was known for his dictatorial, inflexible leadership style, leading to strategic mistakes. Logistics was a nightmare. KMT forces spread across vast territory, lacking efficient supply systems, leaving soldiers often without food, ammo, and medical care. According to historical documents from Britannica, this corruption weakened army morale with high desertion rates and public resentment, especially in rural areas where KMT imposed heavy taxes without improvements. Chiang was also criticized for prioritizing anti-communism over anti-Japanese efforts, losing public support. Their opponent was the Chinese Communist Party CCP, led by Mao Zedong. Founded in 1921 in Shanghai as a small Marxist study group influenced by the Soviet Union. Mao, born 1893 in Hunan, was a peasant origin, self-taught revolutionary theorist. He rose through the 1934–1935 Long March, where the CCP retreated from Jiangxi to evade KMT pursuit, covering thousands of miles with only about 8,000 survivors reaching Yan'an. From the Yan'an base in Shanxi, the CCP applied guerrilla strategy. Enemy advances, we retreat. Enemy retreats, we advance, focusing on people's war rather than direct confrontation. They lacked a large regular army initially, but compensated with iron discipline and high morale. The CCP focused on expanding liberated areas, rural regions they controlled, implementing land reform, redistributing land from landlords to poor peasants, canceling debts and reducing taxes. This attracted millions of peasants, 90% of China's population, to join the revolution, turning them into solid recruitment and support sources. Mao emphasized guns give birth to power, but also used propaganda to build the CCP image as the nation's savior. According to Wikipedia, this strategy grew the CCP from a small persecuted party into a mighty force with covert Soviet support via advisors and aid. The KMT-CCP confrontation wasn't new. They allied in the First United Front 1923–1927, but it shattered disastrously with the 1927 Shanghai massacre when Chiang ordered communist purges, killing thousands of CCP members. The Second United Front formed in 1937 against Japan, but full of conflicts. By 1941, the breakdown was clear, with the new Fourth Army incident, CCP forces attacked by KMT, leading to mutual betrayal accusations. The KMT claimed the CCP exploited the war to expand territory, while the CCP accused the KMT of passivity against Japan to save strength for anti-communism. Tensions persisted throughout Guanpu, with small clashes despite the surface alliance. According to Wikipedia's Second United Front, both sides prepared for post-Japan Civil War, turning fragile peace into full-scale war. These conflicts weren't just about power, but social models, KMT's nationalist capitalism versus CCP's rural communism. After World War II ended, China fell into chaos with a massive power vacuum from Japan's withdrawal. This is when KMT-CCP tensions exploded into full civil war, and the U.S. played a pivotal role in shaping the situation. The U.S. under President Harry Truman strongly supported Chiang Kai-shek's KMT. According to U.S. State Department documents, history.at.state.gov, U.S. forces airlifted tens of thousands of KMT troops into Japanese-controlled territories, allowing them to accept Japanese surrenders and occupy major cities. This was part of Operation Beleaguer from Wikipedia, where U.S. Marines occupied Hebei and Shandong provinces from 1945 to 1949 to stabilize the area and support the KMT. The U.S. provided weapons training and logistics. Billions in aid flowed into KMT coffers, including rifles, artillery, and tanks. U.S. military advisors like General Albert Wedemeyer trained KMT troops, helping them consolidate positions in southern and central China. This support stemmed from America's anti-communist view, seeing the KMT as allies against communism's spread in Asia. However, the U.S. made a clear shift away from the CCP. By April 1945, the U.S. officially recognized only Chiang's nationalist government as China's legitimate representative, ignoring the CCP despite their major anti-Japanese contributions. According to Britannica, this change arose from concerns over Soviet influence on the CCP, especially after the Yalta Conference, where the US, UK, and USSR divided spheres. The U.S. once had relations with the CCP via the 1944 Dixie Mission, where U.S. observers visited Yan'an and were impressed by Mao's organization. But with the Cold War emerging, Washington chose the KMT as a communist bulwark. Chiang exploited this, constantly demanding more aid, even proposing direct U.S. intervention. Yet the U.S. avoided direct combat, fearing a quagmire like in Europe. Instead, they focused on negotiations like General George Marshall's later mission to reconcile the sides and avoid full civil war. The scramble for Manchuria became the post-war tensions focus. This region, Manchukuo, under Japanese control from 1931, was Asia's top industrialized center with coal steel and weapons factories. According to Warfare History Network, Manchuria had huge strategic value due to its proximity to Soviet borders, Korea, and Mongolia, Soviet-influenced areas. After the Soviet invasion of Manchuria in August 1945 and defeating Japan's Kwantung Army, they left thousands of tons of weapons and equipment for the CCP upon 1946 withdrawal per the Yalta Agreement. This gave Mao's forces a massive advantage, building a solid northern base. The KMT, with U.S. support, tried to seize Manchuria by transporting troops from the south, but faced difficulties from remote terrain and local resistance. Chiang prioritized Manchuria as a gateway to dominate the north, but poor logistics and corruption doomed the effort. The CCP, under Lin Biao's command, used guerrilla tactics to control the countryside, gradually besieging KMT-held cities. This competition was not just military, but political. KMT imposed harsh control, losing public support, while the CCP promised land reform. According to Project Muse, U.S. intervention at ports like Qingdao, where U.S. Marines were stationed, temporarily helped the KMT, but they ultimately withdrew to avoid direct involvement in the Civil War. Overall, U.S. post-BWT involvement initially tilted the balance toward the KMT, but also complicated the situation, pushing the CCP closer to the USSR and leading to conflict escalation. These efforts laid the groundwork for the failed negotiations ahead. Amid post-war chaos, diplomatic efforts to prevent full-scale civil war in China were launched, but ultimately led to conflict escalation. The center was U.S. General George C. Marshall's mediation mission from 1945 to 1946. Marshall, famous for the Marshall Plan, rebuilding Europe after Deng Yuan was sent by President Truman to China on December 20, 1945, replacing resigned Ambassador Patrick Hurley. His mission was to mediate between KMT and CCP for ceasefire political unification and a democratic coalition government. According to Truman Library documents, Marshall achieved notable initial successes. In January 1946, he convinced both sides to sign a temporary ceasefire halting major fighting in Manchuria and other areas, followed by a joint declaration in February 1946 committing to avoid civil war and form a political council to discuss a new constitution. Marshall used U.S. influence to pressure the KMT to reduce army size and the CCP to integrate forces into a national army. Initially, this intervention seemed miraculous. Chongqing negotiations led to government reorganization plans with CCP participation in parliament and unified army under Chiang's leadership. However, lack of compromise from both sides doomed the mission disastrously. The KMT under Chiang's direction insisted the CCP abandon control of liberated areas and fully disarm, seeing it as a prerequisite for peace. They feared allowing CCP troops would lead to internal overthrow. Conversely, the CCP led by Mao Zedong and Zhou Enlai firmly maintained separate army and controlled territory, arguing it was security assurance against potential KMT repression, based on memories of past purges like the 1927 Shanghai massacre. According to China File analysis, Marshall's mission rested on two basics. The U.S. wanted Chiang to lead China, but wouldn't provide military support to force KMT reforms. This inflexibility led to deadlock negotiations dragged for months, but by mid-1946, ceasefires were repeatedly violated, with KMT launching attacks on CCP positions in Manchuria. Marshall expressed frustration in reports to Washington describing China's intelligence situation as unsatisfactory and both sides lacking basic trust. By January 1947, he left China declaring the mission a failure, leading to U.S. aid cuts to the KMT and paving the way for full civil war. While the U.S. tried reconciliation, the USSR played a dual role with limited CCP support, but signing the Friendship and Alliance Treaty with the KMT in August 1945. The Sino-Soviet Treaty of Friendship and Alliance was signed in Moscow on August 14, 1945, between Soviet Foreign Minister Vyacheslav Molotov and Chinese Representative Wang Shiji. According to U.S. State Department documents, this treaty was drafted based on the February 1945 Yalta Agreement, where the USSR committed to fight Japan in exchange for Manchuria privileges like railway and Dalian port control. The 30-year treaty committed to anti-Japan and post-war cooperation, non-interference in internals, and Soviet recognition of Chinese sovereignty in Manchuria. However, this was with the KMT government to stabilize relations and avoid direct U.S. conflict. Simultaneously, the USSR covertly supported the CCP withdrawing from Manchuria in 1946. They left thousands of tons of Japanese weapons for Mao's forces, per Reddit's Ask Historians. Stalin maintained a balancing policy, not wanting CCP victory too fast to avoid provoking the U.S., but not fully backing the KMT. This treaty temporarily eased border tensions but didn't prevent civil war escalation, as the USSR prioritized Asian geopolitical interests. The failure of these negotiations marked a turning point, plunging China into full-scale war, with upcoming military moves shaping both sides' fates. When negotiations failed, the Chinese Civil War officially entered its brutal military phase from 1946. Let's analyze the military dynamics of both sides to understand why an initially weaker force turned the tables. First, the strengths and weaknesses of the Kuomintang KMT. The KMT had the world's largest army at the time, with about 4.3 million soldiers in 1946 per historical estimates from Britannica. equipped modernly thanks to U.S.-aid M1 Garand rifles, M4 Sherman tanks, artillery, and fighter planes. This allowed KMT control of major cities and transport routes with firepower and mechanization advantages. However, the fatal weakness was forces spread thin across vast territory, leading to severe logistics issues. Supplies often arrived late, soldiers lacked food ammo, and relied on local looting, alienating the people. Low morale from corruption generals like Du Yuming or Wei Liwang prioritized personal gain, selling weapons to enemies or skipping training. The KMT also lost many experienced officers in Baidu against Japan, leading to ineffective leadership and rigid strategy focused on static defense rather than flexibility. In contrast, the Chinese Communist Party CCP started with a much smaller force, only about 900,000 troops in 1946, mostly guerrillas. They were transitioning from guerrilla to conventional war under Maoist principles, encircling the cities from the countryside. Their greatest strength was sky-high morale. CCP soldiers were forged by strict party discipline with slogans like "Serve the people" and political commissars ensuring loyalty. They were strategically flexible, using familiar terrain for rapid movement, avoiding direct clashes, and focusing on cutting enemy logistics. The CCP lacked modern equipment initially, but compensated with people's war tactics, mobilizing civilians for intelligence and logistics. According to Wikipedia, tight party control minimized corruption, and leaders like Lin Biao or Peng Dehuai excelled in creative strategy, turning weaknesses into advantages through ambushes and encirclements. Key battles and campaigns illustrated this dynamic. Starting with 1946 clashes in Manchuria, CCP forces under Lin Biao resisted KMT in cities like Changchun and Siping. The May 1946 Siping battle was the first major post-ceasefire clash, with CCP initially defending successfully but strategically withdrawing to avoid losses. By June 1946, KMT launched the general offensive to seize the entire north. They advanced strongly, capturing Yan'an, CCP capital, in March 1947, but this was symbolic as Mao had withdrawn, preserving forces. KMT's 1947 Strong Points offensive focused on seizing and holding key points in Manchuria and North China, but forces were isolated. Logistics collapsed due to CCP supply cuts. The CCP countered with counteroffensives. From 1947, they shifted to attack with the 1948 Liaoshen campaign as the peak. Under Lin Biao, CCP forces encircled and annihilated hundreds of thousands of KMT in Shenyang and Jinzhou, seizing massive weapons. According to Warfare History Network, this campaign lasted September to November 1948, with CCP using close the door and beat the dog tactics, cutting relief, and forcing mass KMT surrenders. Other battles in Shandong and Hebei also saw CCP shift from defense to offense, leveraging KMT deserters to boost numbers. Overall, this military dynamic showed KMT's initial advantage eroded by internal weaknesses, while CCP grew through smart strategy and popular support, leading to upcoming turning points. As the war dragged on, turning points emerged, marking KMT's decline and CCP's powerful rise. One of KMT's biggest mistakes was overextension. In March 1947, KMT forces under Hu Zongnan captured Yan'an, CCP's Shanxi capital. This was seen as a major victory, as Yan'an symbolized the communist movement, where Mao developed revolutionary theory. However, according to Britannica, capturing Yan'an was not decisive. The CCP executed a strategic retreat, evacuating all forces and key assets before KMT arrival, leaving only a ruined city. Mao called it retreat to preserve strength, avoiding direct losses and stretching enemy lines. As a result, KMT had to maintain garrisons in remote areas, leading to severe logistics failure. KMT troops were spread thin with isolated outposts easily encircled by CCP. Supply shortages left soldiers starving, diseased, and morale plummeting. According to Office of the Historian Analysis, history.state. This overextension made KMT lose effective control, creating opportunities for CCP counterattacks. While KMT weakened, CCP made tremendous advances. From 1947 to 1948, CCP troop numbers surged to about 2 million, thanks to hundreds of thousands of KMT deserters joining the Communists. They also seized massive weapons tanks and ammo from prior battles, turning initial weaknesses into advantages. CCP launched successful counteroffensives across fronts. In Shandong, they recaptured key cities like Jinan in September 1948, cutting KMT communications in East China. In Shaanxi, CCP forces under Peng Dehuai defeated local forces, expanding control. Especially in Manchuria after the Liu Shen campaign, CCP fully controlled this industrial area, providing solid logistics for later campaigns. According to Wikipedia and historical sources, these victories not only boosted military, but consolidated politics, with local peasants supporting CCP via land reform. The biggest turning point was the 1948 Huaihai campaign, one of the Civil War's 3 decisive campaigns. From November 6, 1948 to January 10, 1949, in Suzhou area of Jiangsu and Anhui, it was China's largest battle then. According to Historica Wiki and Berkshire Publishing, CCP mobilized about 600,000 troops under Liu Bocheng and Deng Xiaoping, facing 800,000 KMT under Liu Zhu. CCP used encirclement tactics, cutting Nanjing relief, and mobilized local civilians for food transport. Mao said, "Huaihai was won by the people pushing carts." KMT was trapped in a sea of people, with elite divisions destroyed or surrendered. Result: KMT lost about 550,000 troops, dead, captured, deserted, including over 100,000 directly besieged at Suzhou. This failure severely weakened KMT Central Forces, opening the way for CCP advance south. Another turning point was the Pingjin campaign from November 29, 1948 to January 31, 1949. Focused on Beijing and Tianjin areas, CCP under Lin Biao encircled about 500,000 KMT under Fu Zuoyi. According to OmniAtlas and Fiveable, CCP swiftly captured Xinbaoan and Zhangjiakou, cutting retreat routes, then attacked Tianjin on January 15, 1949, after 29 hours of fierce fighting. Beijing was peacefully liberated when Fu Zuoyi surrendered to avoid destroying historical sites. This victory marked CCP's full shift to conventional war, controlling the north and forcing KMT defense. These turning points reversed the situation, leading to KMT's collapse. After military turning points, the Kuomintang KMT collapsed rapidly and irreversibly, while the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, consolidated power decisively. The peak of KMT collapse was Chiang Kai-shek, resigning as president on January 21, 1949. According to Britannica historical documents, Chiang handed over to Vice President Li Zongren, hoping to negotiate peace with CCP to salvage the situation. However, this was temporary. Chiang still controlled the army and national gold reserves. By December 1949, after CCP seized most of the mainland Chiang, and about 2 million people, including soldiers, officials, and refugees, fled to Taiwan. This retreat was supported by the U.S. Navy, marking the end of KMT mainland control. Before that, KMT faced severe economic crisis. Hyperinflation peaked in 1948 to 1949, with prices rising millions-fold from pre-war. According to Economic History Review, estimates inflation hit 5,000% per month, rendering currency worthless, with people using wheelbarrows of cash for bread. KMT tried currency reform by issuing gold yuan in 1948, but failed due to corruption and rampant printing. Moreover, brutal treatment of civilians in KMT areas lost public support. Troops often looted forcibly conscripted and suppressed protests, sparking revolts in provinces like Hunan and Sichuan. These factors combined to disintegrate KMT from within, with units surrendering en masse. While KMT declined, CCP applied smart political and military strategies to consolidate power. Politically, CCP focused on land reform, a key policy attracting poor peasants. From 1946, in liberated areas, CCP redistributed land from landlords to tenants, canceled debts and cut taxes. Per overthrow, landlords divide land to peasants. According to Asia Society reports, this campaign affected hundreds of millions of peasants, turning them into loyal supporters, providing food and recruits. CCP used effective propaganda. Through newspapers, radio, and village meetings, they portrayed themselves as national saviors against corrupt KMT regime and U.S. imperialism. This created widespread support waves, especially in rural areas. Majority population. However, CCP strategy wasn't without violence. To enforce reform, they used coercion, organizing public struggle sessions against landlords, leading to widespread violence. Estimates from scholars like Frank Dikötter in The Tragedy of Liberation indicate about 1 million landlords and reactionaries killed from 1947 to 1952 via execution, beating, or forced suicide. These harsh measures eliminated opposition and solidified party control. Militarily, CCP continued expansion after major victories, advancing rapidly south. They captured Nanjing, KMT capital, on April 23, 1949, then spread to Shanghai, Guangzhou, and southwest provinces. The climax was October 1, 1949, when Mao Zedong stood on Tiananmen Square in Beijing, proclaiming the People's Republic of China (PRC). This event, with hundreds of thousands attending, marked CCP's official rise, ending 22 years of struggle and opening a new era. Mao declared, "The Chinese people have stood up," and PRC was immediately recognized by the USSR, consolidating international position. KMT collapse and CCP rise not only changed China's map, but shaped Asian history, leading to Taiwan's role as the final stronghold. With the mainland falling to CCP, Taiwan became the Kuomintang's KMT final stronghold, where Chiang Kai-shek rebuilt his crumbling empire. In 1949, Chiang led a massive migration, about 2 million people, including 600,000 soldiers. Government officials, businessmen, and refugees crossed the Taiwan Strait to escape. According to Taiwan National Archives historical documents, the convoy brought national gold reserves, about 500,000 taels of gold, Forbidden City artifacts, and key documents to maintain Republic of China ROC legitimacy. They arrived in Taiwan by late 1949 after CCP seized Nanjing and southern provinces. Chiang established an exiled government in Taipei, declaring Taiwan temporary ROC territory, and continued claiming to be China's legitimate government. This retreat was not just military, but cultural. Many intellectuals and artists followed KMT, carrying classical Chinese heritage to preserve from godless communism on the mainland. Taiwan's prior history shaped its fate under KMT. From 1895 to 1945, Taiwan was a Japanese colony after the Qing dynasty's defeat in the Jiawu War and signing the Treaty of Shimonoseki. Under Japanese rule, Taiwan was strongly modernized, building railways, schools, hospitals, and industrialized agriculture, turning the island into the Japanese Empire's rice granary. Native population, Taiwanese Hoklo, and Austronesian indigenous, was educated Japanese style, with Japanese as official language. However, colonization brought repression. Anti-Japanese movements like the 1915 Musha incident were brutally crushed. After WW2, Taiwan was handed to China per 1943 Cairo Declaration and 1945 Potsdam Agreement. Post-war period was challenging. War devastated economy, food shortages, and cultural clashes between Japanese accustomed locals and new KMT regime. Inflation spread from mainland, leading to famine and social unrest with locals feeling colonized twice by mainland Chinese. KMT rule on Taiwan was initially harsh to consolidate power amid CCP threats. On February 28, 1947, an anti-tobacco monopoly and corruption protest erupted in Taipei, spreading into island-wide resistance. KMT troops under Governor Chen Yi's orders brutally suppressed, leading to the February 28 incident. According to 228 Memorial Foundation, estimates 10,000 to 30,000 Taiwanese were killed, including local elites like doctors, lawyers, and teachers. Thousands arrested or disappeared, creating lasting trauma in Taiwanese society. KMT imposed martial law from 1949 to 1987, the White Terror era, with tens of thousands of political arrests to eliminate opposition and enforce loyalty. CCP didn't leave Taiwan in peace. In 1949, they attempted to invade Kinmen Island in the October 25-27 Battle of Guningtou. CCP's 9,000 troops attacked, but failed disastrously due to lack of naval experience, bad weather, and fierce KMT resistance with air support. According to military history, quarterly CCP lost over 3,000 troops, while KMT only about 1,400. This failure paused larger Taiwan invasion plans. However, CCP succeeded in seizing Hainan Island in 1950. From April to May, under Han Xianchu, they crossed the Cheongzhou Strait in wooden boats, defeating 100,000 KMT and controlling China's largest island. This victory bolstered CCP Navy, but the June 1950 Korean War prompted U.S. intervention, deploying the 7th Fleet to protect the Taiwan Strait, preventing full invasion. Taiwan thus became KMT fortress, where they built economic miracles and gradual democratization, but also the origin of enduring tensions. To understand why the Chinese Communist Party CCP could turn the tables from a weak guerrilla force to mainland dominator, we must deeply analyze key factors leading to their victory. First, Kuomintang KMT failure was decisive, stemming from poor strategy and low morale. Chiang Kai-shek prioritized large offensives without logistics calculation, spreading forces thin and vulnerable to encirclement. For example, in northern campaigns, KMT focused on capturing cities while ignoring countryside, allowing CCP control and supply cuts. KMT army morale collapsed from rampant corruption. Generals often embezzled U.S. aid, leaving soldiers without food, clothing, and weapons. According to Journal of Asian Studies, historical analyses, desertion rates were extremely high. About 40% of KMT troops deserted during training, joining CCP with weapons and intelligence. Logistics totally collapsed. Railways destroyed transport slow, and inflation weakened salary payments. These factors turned KMT from a mighty army into a disintegrating force unable to sustain positions long-term. Conversely, CCP's strength lay in effective leadership and tight organization. Mao Zedong was the strategic brain, with People's War principles combining guerrilla and conventional, enabling rapid adaptation. Lin Biao, Northern Genius General, excelled in encirclement campaigns like Liushun, exploiting terrain to destroy enemy parts piecemeal. Zhu de People's Liberation, Army commander, ensured tight coordination across fronts from Shandong to central China. Strict party discipline was key. Every soldier under commissar control minimized corruption and ensured absolute loyalty. CCP succeeded in shifting from guerrilla to conventional war by 1947, doubling numbers via deserters and recruitment. Most importantly, peasant support via land reform. By redistributing land and canceling debts, CCP turned millions of tenants into backing force providing intelligence, food, and recruits. According to Harvard University Press research, this policy not only boosted military, but created solid social foundation, unlike KMT's detachment from people. A key diplomatic factor was U.S. policy shift. By 1947, the U.S. sharply reduced KMT support after General Marshall's failed mission. President Harry Truman, fearing Asian quagmire, focused on rebuilding Japan as regional anti-communist ally rather than investing in weakening KMT. According to Truman Library documents, U.S. cut aid from billions to symbolic citing Chiang's corruption and incompetence. Truman publicly criticized Chiang as a dictator and refused direct intervention despite requests. This hesitation was reinforced by 1950 Korean War, when North Korean forces invaded South U.S., redirected resources to the peninsula, deploying 7th Fleet to protect Taiwan Strait against CCP invasion, but not increasing mainland KMT support. This indirectly helped CCP consolidate without major U.S. obstacles. Conversely, CCP received covert Soviet support, like weapons and advisors, though Stalin initially cautious to avoid Washington conflict. Overall, CCP victory resulted from KMT internal failures, outstanding CCP leadership, and popular support combined with strategic U.S. withdrawal. These reasons not only explain the Civil War's end, but shape global legacy. The Chinese Civil War unofficially ended in 1949 with Chiang Kai-shek's retreat to Taiwan, but its legacy echoes to today, shaping global geopolitics. The 1945-1949 war, with roots in the 1920s, left a divided China People's Republic of China, PRC, on mainland, and Republic of China, ROC, on Taiwan. This isn't peace, it's fragile armistice with both claiming sovereignty over each other. Casualty estimates horrific, about 2 million military dead or wounded per official Communist Party figures, with People's Liberation Army losing about 1.5 million and nationalists over 600,000. Civilians suffered worse, with about 5 million dead from combat, famine, disease, and political violence, according to Britannica and historical sources. These numbers make the Chinese Civil War one of the 20th century's bloodiest conflicts, second only to Huaihai, emphasizing the ideological divide cost between capitalist nationalism and communism. The biggest legacy is Taiwan's role in U.S. Cold War strategy. Initially, President Truman hesitated, supporting Chiang, deeming KMT lost, per 1949 Atchison report. However, June 1950 Korean War changed everything. Soviet and China-backed North invaded South, alarming U.S. over Asian communism spread. Truman deployed 7th Fleet to patrol Taiwan Strait, blocking PRC invasion, and signing 1954 U.S.-Taiwan Mutual Defense Treaty. Taiwan became America's unsinkable aircraft carrier, receiving billions in aid for army and economy building. This solidified ROC UN position until 1971, when PRC replaced. Korea's impact not only saved Taiwan, but pushed U.S. into Asian proxy wars like Vietnam, deepening East-West divide. Tensions persist today, with CCP viewing Taiwan as part of unfinished revolution. Under Xi Jinping, reunification is core mission, with One China slogan and gray zone actions like airspace and sea incursions. In October 2025, per Reuters, Xi sent reunification message to Taiwan's new opposition leader, emphasizing Great Chinese Nation. Taiwan Ministry of National Defense reports frequent Chinese military flights, with 3 flights and 5 warships around island in one recent day per Economic Times. U.S. criticizes Beijing's South China Sea actions where clashes with Philippines escalate regional tensions per YouTube News. Experts warn of Chinese nuclear blackmail if U.S. intervenes defending Taiwan per Focus Taiwan, and efforts to divide Taiwan military via spies per Taiwan Plus News. Taiwan, now vibrant democracy with high Freedom House Freedom Index, self-identifies as Democratic ROC with high-tech economy leading world in semiconductors. This contrast highlights civil war legacy. One side, one-party regime with tight control, the other, prosperous democratic model. These tensions threaten global peace, with U.S. committing to defend Taiwan via Taiwan Relations Act and Atlantic Council reports, suggesting Taiwan learn from China's gray actions with Philippines to avoid open conflict. This legacy reminds us internal wars can spread globally, with Taiwan still a potential hotspot for major conflict. And so we've closed our epic journey through the Chinese Civil War, from World War II ashes to today's Taiwan Island, a vivid symbol of resilience and transformation. Look back, Taiwan, once peaceful Japanese colony from 1895-1945, with lush rice fields and modern railways, became KMT's final stronghold in 1949, where Chiang brought 2 million souls fleeing communist storm. Under harsh martial law, the island endured White Terror and isolation years. But from there sprouted the Taiwan Miracle, explosive economy, radiant democracy, and now world's Silicon Heart, with TSMC producing chips shaping the future. From tiny island Taiwan rose to global hotspot where narrow 130-kilometer strait could ignite World War III between U.S. and China. At BattleForge Legends, we don't just tell stories. We forge war legends to make you future strategists. Thank you for joining this marathon video. If you're passionate about history, shaping the world, like now, to support, share with geopolitics-loving friends, and subscribe plus turn on bell for BattleForge Legends to never miss. See you in the next video, where we continue forging legends. BattleForge Legends, where history becomes a weapon.